Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Monster Hunter Wilds talk. Today I'm going to overview some tips to have a better hunting experience as an endgame hunter. It's the type of stuff that should be useful for your experienced wild hunters at this point. You're grinding hunter rank, you're in the true endgame, let's begin. The goal for a lot of this information is to be kind of as sweaty as possible, or maybe not like true speedrunner level, but pushing things to the limit as much as we can. On that note, even the little details like what equipment your Palico is running can mean extra DPS. Let's say in the example that you're not running a paralysis weapon. Then having your Palico actually have a paralysis weapon instead, or maybe in combination, will lead up to at least one paralyze for the monster during the hunt. That's obviously free DPS, and against certain monsters that have extra hit zones, say the feelers when they're out during gore magala, having a paralysis at that moment is massive DPS. And an alternative to that would be something like sleep as another option. Now, something you'll be doing a ton of in the endgame right now is investigations, and in particular, you're looking for those investigations that are going to be really potent, which is definitely not this. Let's say in the case of this Arkveld in particular, I'm after a ton of defensive max rarity decorations. The fact that it's got an Arkveld gem guaranteed and basic materials, that's really nice. So naturally, what am I going to do? I'm going to create the quest for this and save it as an investigation. Then I'll be able to do this 3 times before it's done and gone forever. If you're really trying to maximize, then make sure whenever this good investigation's available, also first begin it as a field survey. This means you're going to get to do the very same investigation for the same rewards we just looked at, but it won't actually go into the investigation number at all. It's just a field survey. So the total amount of times you can do one specific hunt with specific bonus rewards is 4 times at a minimum. But in regards to field investigations, there's a whole tab here you might not be making use of, which could find things that maybe you didn't save as investigations that are good. Like for example, this tempered Arkveld with its relic rewards and basic materials. But there's something to really consider when it comes to Arkveld as a monster. You see how we've got 3 offensive decorations as a reward there? It seems to be the case that Arkveld is built different, as it were. If you look at this Tempered Raidao as a great example, this is a 7-star quest, right, in terms of difficulty. Then we have Arkveld non-tempered, equal in quest difficulty. The only thing above that you're going to find is a Tempered Arkveld at 8-star. So you see how this Great Hunt multi-hunt is an 8-star? Well, look at that, Tempered Arkveld, Tempered Arkveld. Here's an Arkveld with another monster, but the Arkveld's not tempered, so it's only 7-star. This is actually a special indication about the tier of rewards. Look at these. The tier of rewards for an Arkveld seems to actually be higher than other monsters, and that's why you might have found that it's just best to hunt Arkveld when you're doing that long-term grind. So the general rule is Tempered Arkveld and anything else is probably going to be a good hunt. And then if you're just trying to min-max your time, just doing Tempered Arkveld on his own with maximum rewards is the way to go. So essentially his reward slots, they have a higher potential ceiling than other monsters. Here's a quick tip that we've learned over the time of the game, and it's to do with crafting your Artian weapons. Very quickly, very straightforward. If you're not sure what to do in regards to the Artian bonus, attack infusion or infinity, always go attack. 9 times out of 10, that's going to give you the biggest value. The hit zones in this game are a little bit weird. They're very low when it comes to element. So we're finding that attack and status is really good. At the time that I make this video, the fastest speed run for a Tempered Arkveld was using a status, paralysis in particular, charge blade, rather than like a dragon charge blade, which is one of its best options as an element hit zone. So boosting the raw damage of your weapons does go a long way, and it's not until you commit to affinity where you've got like very high affinity and you're committing in ways when it comes to like crit boost and otherwise to make that affinity more valuable. Meanwhile, these Artian bonus attack infusions are immediately very relevant for every weapon. I'm even doing this with my element dual blades. Another long-term thing that you're going to want to have done is having ideal pop-up camp locations on each map. I think at this point we all know the Windward Plains pretty damn well, but what about the other locations? My general rule for camp setting is it needs to be at least safe if I can make it that way, but it needs to connect around the world in a convenient way for the different hunts. So personally, I like Area 18 West as a high up camp location on the south side of the map, and then on the north side up high, even though it's classified as insecure, I've never had a monster go near it, And this is where you're going to fight duna and find some aerial monsters by area 16, so it's very nice to have. For the oilwell basin, the camps are a little bit more awkward. I really wanted a camp that's a lot closer to area 17 than we can actually find. Sadly, the closest camp that's reliable is this one in area 13, the limestone cavern. Technically, there's one closer, which is the lower strata north, but as you can see, it's classified as dangerous and monsters just destroy it. For the iceshard cliffs, I'd like to highlight the ancient room where you're going to find Rove, nice central on one of the layers. There's also the floating rock wall, which is a nice middle point between area 8 and 16, very safe from monsters because they just can't get there. And there's also this one in area 15, the upper corridor. It's actually up on a balcony where monsters cannot get to it, even though it's directly next to an instantly accessible monster area, which is area 15. Lastly, the ruins of Wyvria. For me on this one, I just wanted a good camp at the lowest level. I find that it goes down and down and down, and then there's no good camp for area 14 or 15. Sadly, that's just the case. The best one I've been able to find is this one in area 13 at the bottom. In area 13, there's a hidden cave up a wall you can climb. So this is the one I'd recommend you set down. Most camps are safe in this region. There's just not a lot of options, sadly. Next up, just kind of a weird tip, one that is kind of convenient, more than I expected it to be. Now, when you're holding L2 or aiming in focus mode, you can aim and grab items like this herb from the back of your seikret while you're going. Pretty cool. But did you know, you don't actually need to aim at these. If I hold L2 to do the focus mode aiming, and then press up and down on the D-pad, you can see on the left that I'm going down this list of options. So for this bitterbug that I am definitely not aiming at, like the bitterbug's there, right? I'm looking all the way over here, and I can just do that on the list and instantly grab it. Same for this blast knot. It's a really convenient tool, but let me show you a really nice example of this. An area you might be fairly well acquainted with right now is a super point farm that exists here in the Scarlet Forest. Behind that waterfall, a secret cave here, we dive in, and then there's this route that you take to find a ton of items for trading, and as well, lots of points for point farming. Instead of having to manually look around and, okay, there's one there, and there's one there, and there's one there, I don't need to do any of that. We can just use this technique. I aim with focus mode and then go down this with the D-pad, and then I'm just auto-grabbing these without aiming at anything. It just finds them assuming it's in range, and then immediately brings it to me. It does technically need to be in your line of sight, but as soon as it is in line of sight, it seems to pop up on this list, so you know that it's technically available. And so I'm gathering all this treasure without even looking anywhere particular, so it makes for some seriously convenient gameplay, let me tell you. Next, a quick tip for testing and checking anything out you might be interested in. There's a lot of interesting skills in this game that activate and work at different times. But when you come into the training area, there is a guaranteed way, a really cool mechanic, to activate these special skills. So, Agitator. I'm never going to get this perk when in the training room, am I? It only works when a large monster near me becomes enraged. And so the training dummy is never going to be enraged. So by activating it here, it's going to give me Agitator as if there's a monster enraged next to me, and suddenly it's going, it's working. This could be very handy for you if you want to look at the stats and see how this actually affects your character and what benefits that are actually occurring. Good example of that you might be interested in is testing how, say, antivirus works and the gore set. So it's going to force that frenzy on me while I'm standing here, and it's also going to trigger the antivirus so that I'm able to cleanse it. So if you have any interesting skills like frenzy like there, you can indeed use it in the training room and test it. You just need to speak with Luke and activate the skills. It's really that easy. All right, next up I want to talk about decorations, because this is obviously, for endgame, super important. Something that you're going to be doing a lot of in that endgame is decoration melding, specifically wyverian melding. Now, there's a clear tell here that you may not have recognized, and it's the fact that the most expensive, most valuable sword ancient orbs, which is basically offensive decorations, cost 120 points, compared to the half of that, 60 points, for the most valuable defensive decoration melding. The reason for that is because the potential melding for your defensive decorations is significantly smaller, like a smaller list of options, than the offensive options. That is because the list of defensive decorations is all just one skill and then the varying levels of it based on the size of the decoration. Meanwhile, say an offensive decoration, that could be 2 skills. It could be the main skill that has 3 levels on it, and then a extra skill that's added for 1 level on it. These have much different value when it comes to melding, as you can see. This is exactly one of those skills. So all of that is to say that you're way more likely to find the highest tier of defensive decorations than you are the offensive ones. So all of your points, all of your resources when it comes to melding should go into RNGing offensive decorations, because you're probably going to find the defensive ones much easier through normal gameplay anyway. So why waste the resources on melding defensively? Quick note on some offensive decorations that cannot have an extra skill on them. So take crit boost here. At level 3, you can only have crit boost as this decoration. There cannot be like a fire attack 1 adjacent to that, or I don't know, razor sharp level 1 attached. You will only find crit boost as the skill. You can't double up. And the same is for attack boost if attack boost is the main skill. By comparison though, you can get attack boost as the second skill with that 1 level on it on loads of different decorations, as you can see. But it's physically impossible to get attack 3 on a decoration and then +1 of something else in our current version. I did a whole video going into this topic very in depth if you are interested, but here's a nice slide to show you all of the different decorations that can only have that main skill and then not an extra skill with 1 level on. It's physically impossible for this list of decoration options. Now, one little thing that you can do, it's pretty cool by the way, is make use of these great thunderbugs. Sure, you can use them like a shock trap if you activate them, but you can also literally use capture nets against these to generate yourself directly, like an instant craft, a shock trap on demand, which is pretty cool. You're not going to find those unless it's the right time. So right now, obviously, we've got the sand tide going on the windward plains, so there's a few of them around the map. But what's cool about this, if you can make use of it, is let's say you see a thunderbug like this, you can instantly use your shock trap for DPS because you know that you can immediately refill and craft yourself another shock trap on the spot. And that's nice because while the thunderbugs do work as a kind of active shock trap, an actual shock trap you can keep in your pocket and put down where you want when you're ready, so it's not going to miss. Just a little way to make the most out of those thunderbugs. Okay, for this section I want to do a bunch of combat specific tips, touching on a lot of different things. Starting with the ability to, kind of like an SNS, every weapon activate certain pods, equipment, without unsheathing your weapon. I think the switch axe here, which is a big weapon, should be a good example of that. You're aiming and focusing with focus mode, L2. So you already have this tool to aim. Now you might think that you need to put your weapon away to pull out your pod and then fire it. And sure, you can, you do. But if you've got focus mode going while your weapon is out, you can instead press the left stick in on a controller. That's not quite, the same firing as when your weapon's away, but it works the same, allowing you to fast fire even though the weapon is in my hands right now. Really straightforward. And obviously super impactful in the middle of flying abilities like Arkveld stuff at the drop of a hat. On that note, you can do something kind of similar with your mantle. I've got my weapon out, and we're going to hold L1, and then instead of pressing anything else, I'll press R2 on the controller. And you can see that I'm going to fast equip my current mantle of choice, which in this case is evasion mantle. And so I don't have to, spend the time to go here. I don't have to use the radial wheel to do that. Or, you could hold L1 and press, say, the middle button on a PlayStation controller, pull this menu up, and then find the mantle that way. It is technically another option I could do. But at the end of the day, it's very easy to literally just press L1 and R2, and boom, the mantle's on or off that smoothly. With the weapon unsheathed the whole time, by the way. Next, a couple tips to do with wounds. You want to maximize your mounting. So my goal when I'm mounting is to open at least 2 wounds. Even against the hardest monsters, you can do that. But, attacking a wound is significantly better than attacking just anything. So you can really maximize your DPS by, say, going to a best hit zone, like the head, and opening a wound. Then going to a hard to reach hit zone, like the back or something, and opening a wound there. Then you'll finish the mount by breaking the hard to reach wound on the back, leaving an active wound on the head. Now the monster's knocked down because you finished a mount, you just run to the head and DPS the head for a great free DPS hit zone that's also a wound, so you're getting even more value there. While you're mounting, this also highlights the whole fresh wound versus open wound concept. If you weren't aware, as you deal damage to a specific target, like when you're mounting, you open up this kind of white or greyish wound that isn't truly an open wound, but the next hit on it will cause an open wound that will flare red that you might choose to attack or focus strike. Interestingly, you can focus strike these wounds and it kind of will deal damage, right? Opening the wound and auto follow into the focus mode strike on a wound, which is a nice convenient thing. But when it comes to landing focus strikes on these wounds, you got to think about maximizing these. Obviously, it depends weapon per weapon, but with dual blades, for example, it's one of the only ways, or actually the only way, that you can recover stamina while at the same time building demon gauge, which is an incredibly impactful thing. So as I'm getting low on stamina, that's when I'll focus mode strike a wound to recover stamina. Or if I'm getting low on demon gauge, that's when I'll go for the wound with my focus mode strike. You could also do this with switch axe for, say, maintaining your power axe. Same thing for charge blade, because that activates that power axe mode. As your power axe mode's about to run out or has run out, you save wounds for that purpose, not just blindly popping immediately the moment you see them because it feels good. So having a bit of a plan based on the way your wound pop focus mode strike mechanic works is worth thinking about. Couple other things, say the offset mechanic. By now, hopefully you've realized it, but the first offset that causes that flinch and knockback and the cool animation, that's free. That's guaranteed to happen on the first offset. But the second offset and following offsets, there's a kind of hidden system. Basically, you need to land multiple offsets relatively back to back to build up this kind of hidden gauge, and when that's full, it triggers the next special offset stagger. So you may have found that without realizing, but basically your first offset's always going to trigger that cool knockdown and give you that cool follow-up, but you'll need to hit a few in a row before that happens again from then on. So if you have an offset weapon, at least trigger it once a hunt for that instant effect. Next tip is to do with monster capturing and ending hunts quicker. If you're doing lots of farming, I strongly recommend you start capturing monsters. When they start to show their skull on the minimap or otherwise visually obvious low health, that's when you drop a trap, that's when you drop 2 trank bombs or whatever, and that ends the hunt, instantly capturing it. You know, when it's low health, it still has a lot of health left, and that can be minutes added to the hunt, especially if something goes wrong. Ending the hunt there and then ends it quickly, and then you get to the rewards, you run it again. If you're hardcore grinding, you want to pick up the pace. Little tip for this is something used by speedrunners. You can pre-trank a monster and then put a trap down when you're ready while it's currently actively tranked. When you trap a monster, it's held in place, it's easy DPS. If it's about to hit the skull, then you can use that trap as a way to easily DPS it into skull. If it's already pre-tranked and now that it's just hit skull while in a trap, that instantly ends the hunt, which is a cool trick speedrunners use to maximize their time. Last 2 things I want to talk about is going to be actually maximizing your buffs. What I'm talking about specifically here is this setup that I run now. It's called this because it runs Demon Drug, it runs Demon Powder, and it runs Might Seed. But there's technically more than that. There's also Mega Demon Drug, and there's Might Pills. You could run all of this at once if you really wanted, but to give you the numbers, just imagine Demon Drug is going to be 5 raw for its active, and it's very cheap to run and make. Whereas a Mega Demon Drug is the same thing but 7 raw by comparison, so slightly more. By comparison, we have Might Seeds, that's going to be about 10 raw, right? And the same for Demon Powder as well, another 10. The Might Pills are insane, they're 25 raw, but obviously quite hard to make and not sustainably reasonable to use. So what I'm saying is Might Seeds are very common. You're going to get them through trading, farming, picking them up and gathering. You turn these into Demon Drug and also say the Demon Powder, and you can smoothly run all 3 of these, most if not every hunt that you run. And because I do that, that's an extra 25 raw for all of my sets, meaning my kills and my farming is just ever so slightly quicker and smoother. But if you're wanting to do this, in my opinion, I wouldn't rely on just the farm for things like Might Seeds. I have this lazy set dedicated to gathering, which basically just means it's got max botanist, it's got max geologist. There's also other skills that are going to be relevant for gathering and that kind of focus to make it smoother, like monsters don't notice you and that kind of thing, but I don't have any issues with that. All I do is I run botanist so that we're able to get extra items from fruits, nuts, seeds like Might Seeds, even at level 2, and mushrooms and herbs and so on. Same thing for geologist, as I get special items, it gives me extra there, mining, as well as bone piles. And with just that, I run around the maps picking up all the valuable things. Like every now and then I'll do like a 2-minute quick mite seed run and get a pile of them. And so I never ever run out. You can also match this with farming, obviously. And so I do recommend you run at least a farming set. And it's also a good idea on that note to have a gathering set of the item box, just so your item pouch is very small and can get a load of stuff that you're picking up without overfilling. It's something that I do every now and then. It takes a lot less time than you might think, and then you can really run the strongest stuff kind of infinitely. But yeah, that's just my overview of a bunch of endgame focused hunting tips that I wanted to give you. Honestly, there's a lot to cover here and a lot to talk about, and I could come back for another one of these if you guys wanted more tips like this. On that note, if you guys would like to suggest any tips of this nature, endgame hunting tips, if we do come back to make another one of this topic, well then I'll credit you and maybe you'll help someone in the comments. But yeah, hope it was interesting and useful. For now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.